Welcome back for another episode of Branching Out with Sierra. Have you ever sent off an email, a text message, left a voicemail, and felt like it disappeared into a black hole? Maybe you followed up once or twice and never heard anything and wondered what happened. Was it that they never got the message? Was it that it wasn't that important to them? Were they upset with you? What is their reason for not responding? Should I follow up? How long should I wait before I follow up? It leads to tons of questions. This is what we're talking about today. We're going to dig into communication very specifically and talk about the waiting game. Why response time matters more than you think. This topic came to me today. Yes, I didn't prepare way in advance like I normally would. It came to me today as it's something that I've been experiencing a lot lately. It's that frustration with waiting on replies from people, having to send multiple follow-up emails to finally get acknowledgement, a response at all. And I understand how this can happen. It makes total sense to me how it can happen, why it's happening. But what I really want people to think about is what it says about your leadership when people can't count on you to simply respond to a communication. So let's talk about the problem a little bit here. It's something that Eric Murr is going to be talking about at the upcoming Tri-State Leadership Summit, and that's information overload that we're all experiencing all the time. We have emails coming in constantly. He mentioned on an episode he did with me about how, he was on vacation. He was trying to keep up with emails. And while he was responding to two and feeling good about himself getting it done, numerous came in and he was still behind. So we're constantly dealing with more information coming in. And he talks about needing to triage that. So, more is coming in, you skim it. And maybe you mark it as something you'll come back to later for whatever reason. Is it you come back to it later because you don't have enough information to answer their question yet? You're waiting on something else. Or you'll come back to it later. This is something I often experience, that they wrote a very thorough email that to me elicits a very thoughtful response. And I know in that moment, I cannot give them the amount of thought that it deserves. So it's something I'm going to have to come back to later. Maybe in, all of their things that are going on in their life, what is important to you and in that email really just didn't fall in their top priorities at the time because they have other stuff going on that you don't realize they're dealing with. And it's just not a top priority. And then maybe they forget or more emails continue to pile up on top of it. And before you know it, you're hundreds of emails behind. I have people reach out to me all the time about holding them accountable for digging out of that email hole and slowly getting caught up to the point where you can get to inbox 0 every day, which maybe some people have never seen an inbox of 0 before. It is possible. It is possible to get there. And I can tell you once you get there, it's much easier to maintain. So it takes a lot of work up front to get to a point where you have a clean slate on a regular basis. But think about if you had a clean slate, how much more effectively you would be able to prioritize the information coming in and really get back to people in an appropriate amount of time. There's also the phone calls, the text messages. I know I've mentioned before in an episode, I'll put my phone on Do Not Disturb for the workday because obviously I'm in meetings. And when I'm not in meetings, I have admin time on my calendar, which is set aside for important tasks that have to be completed to prep for upcoming appointments. So if I hop on to phone calls during that time, I am then not completing the most important things and I'm not going to be prepared. So my phone sits on Do Not Disturb throughout the day. So at the end of the day, I have my emails, which I have maintained throughout the day with consistency. So honestly, it's the most under control. I have missed phone calls with a lot that don't leave voicemails. So I have no idea if it was a butt dial or if they intended to leave a message or the message just didn't come through. Sometimes I feel like it comes through 3 days after the missed call actually was on there. And then how much time is it going to take if I follow up with them? Is it just a casual conversation? Is there an actual need? Do I have the information they need? So there's a lot of thought that goes into that. And then you have all the text messages you get throughout the day. I know I come out to like 15 or 20 people have texted me during the day, and I have to go through that and prioritize. So obviously there's so much information all the time. So again, I understand why it's happening that people aren't responding. So I want to think about the impact of that before we get to solutions to the problem. It's not just an inconvenience to people. It truly gives you a feeling that you are not valued. And a lot of the times, I know this isn't the case. So for a lot of my relationships, I know people are busy, and I try not to jump to conclusions when I don't get a response. I try to presume positive intentions and assume that they're just busy and it got buried in their inbox and they'll get to it as soon as they can. But as I mentioned before, it sends you into this endless loop of, how long do I wait before I send something out again? Did they delete it on purpose? Did they care to respond? I don't know about everyone else, but for me, I have this loop thinking and I start to question, is someone upset with me? Did I say something that made them mad? Do I need to apologize for something? And I start to overthink it and, start blaming myself for the lack of response. So that sense of not being valued or having doubts whether or not, I've done something to hurt the relationship, that takes time and energy to even go through that thought process. It's in the back of my head rolling around throughout the day and truly is distracting. Also, it makes me think, well, if this person is not responding to me, I'm questioning whether I can trust that they would follow through if I would send someone their way. So let's just say, it's someone that I could potentially be sending clients to. Well, if their response time to me is not great, or it takes 5 follow-up emails to get them to respond to me and acknowledge receipt, then can I trust that they're going to take great care of referrals that I send their way? That's something you have to think about, because you start to think that this is just the way that they function. So it's concerning and you start to not trust. It's just inefficient in general. So every time, that I have to slow down and go back and who hasn't responded to me, what checks have I not been able to put in my planner because I did outreach and didn't get the response. It's inefficiency. It's just wasted energy and time. And that's frustrating. So there's a lot that it does to the other person, to the recipient. And I've talked a couple of times lately to some friends about this, and they've stated, Sierra, people just don't function like you. You have to realize that not everybody functions like you, and they don't have that high of expectations. And I'm like, but why? At what point did we decide that it's not important? Because to me, when I know how much is going on in people's lives, it's just like getting mail in my mailbox, even if it's a bill. I think somebody made that happen, right? Somebody stopped, and maybe it's automated at this point, but stuffed an envelope or put a stamp on the envelope and addressed it to me. It took time. Or if I go and sit down and write someone a note, an email, or a personal note, it takes time. For that period of time, I'm 100% focused on that person. And if someone's going to take time out of their day to send me something, I feel guilt if I don't take time out of my day to send them something back. And I said to Matt earlier when we were having lunch, it's like walking past someone on the sidewalk and you say hi to them, and they totally disregard you. There's no response whatsoever. It's the worst feeling. I don't know if other people have experienced that before. I tend to say hi to people when I pass them. But it's like a punch in the gut sometimes. And it's the same thing. You would not do that to a person in person. I hope you wouldn't. So why would we do that via email? Why is that communication any less valuable? I don't see it as less valuable. I see it as still taking time and effort and thought. So we have to do something about it. And I really think that the reason that this fits so well into this podcast is we have to lead ourselves effectively to lead others effectively. And we're not leading ourselves effectively if we are not being responsive to people that are trying to communicate with us, whether it's personally or professionally. When you are responsive, it makes you appear to be more reliable. You gain people's respect. It's just a part of professionalism in general. And I feel like every interaction with a person is an opportunity to either build up trust or for it to be broken down. And we need to be intentional about taking that opportunity to build up the trust. What can I do when I receive this email? What can I do to build trust in this relationship? Disregarding the email is not building trust. That's breaking it down immediately. So really thinking about your current communications and how well you are getting back to people. That's what I want you to be considering as we go through this episode today. Are you someone that lets the email sit for a week at a time and then you get to it when you get to it? Or are you someone that truly never gets back to it? You have great intentions, you mean to, and you never get back to it because they just keep piling on. And maybe when you decide to work towards that inbox zero, you find out 3 months later that someone reached out to you and it's actually a missed opportunity. It was, a new client that you could have taken on and they already went with someone else. So there are a lot of implications and a lot of reasons we need to be thinking about this. So I was thinking about, how does it work for me? What did I do to kind of drill down on this and get better about it? Well, I know that people in general, I don't know if I have intentionally trained them to believe this or what. I don't think that I've ever necessarily stated it to a lot of people, but people communicate with me via email more than anything else. Not text message. If it's text message, it's like I will do my best to get to it by the time I go to bed tonight and go back through the list and at least send a response to everyone, but it's not ever going to be as thoughtful of a response as if you email me. And that's also just about efficiency of I don't want to type and make a ton of errors on my phone because for some reason I can't type on my phone as well when I can launch a thoughtful email much more quickly. So here's public service announcement. If you really want a thoughtful response from me, please don't text me. You will get a much better response via email. But I think setting expectations as to the best way to communicate with you is step one. So I have clients sometimes that say that their clients are constantly reaching out to them and they're not getting work done because they're getting all these questions. And I'm like, well, are they emergencies? So why are you immediately reacting to it and handling it in the moment rather than saying, okay, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to make all these phone calls back at this time of the day? Like, can we be more intentional about where, we choose to communicate? When it's going to be a phone call, when I check my text messages, when I check my emails, and who is going to be reaching out in each way. I try not to text too much with my clients. I do have a texting relationship with some of them, but I think they've also very quickly realized that they don't get very great responses via text, and they end up switching back over to email because I'll take what they said in text and I'll end up responding in email and starting a chain that way. But how do you want people to communicate with you? Really think about it and train people to know the best way to reach out to you so it fits your method and it allows you to be more efficient in your responses. That's going to be different for everyone. And then to me, this is the most important piece. Identifying your response time. What is the maximum amount of time that it should take you to get back to someone? Identify that. What is your standard that you're working towards? For me, it's 24 hours. Back when I started my business, I used to say 1 business day, but I don't know what a business day is anymore, honestly, and everybody functions completely different. I mean, I often end up working on the weekends, so I'll end up responding on weekends. Other people, that might not be a business day. So it's just easier to say 24 hours. I really want to get back to you in 24 hours. If for some reason I haven't, there's usually a really good reason. What I try to do is I try to at least acknowledge receipt within 24 hours. So that looks like, hey, wanted to let you know I saw your message. I have a massive list of stuff I'm trying to get out right now, but I want to give this the time and attention it deserves. I'll be back in touch within blank. Resetting expectations. So if you can't follow through on your commitment that you make to a 24-hour response time, 48-hour response time, whatever is appropriate for you, then manage the expectations of the other person so that you're not stating this is what your response time is and then turning around, not responding in that amount of time, and then they're left wondering what happened. Now, I don't trust Sierra because she says she responds in 24 hours, but she's not following through. So I know that I've been sitting here today thinking this is Saturday. I'm recording on a Saturday. There are people that sent me emails yesterday on Friday, and I was with a client the entire day yesterday. And obviously, it was difficult to go from that to hobnob in the valley, get home at 10 o'clock at night, and try to get responses out. I've been at events and recording a different podcast and everything up until this moment today. I have not been able to sit down to emails, but in the back of my head all day, it's been, how long has it been since so-and-so sent me an email? Have I hit the 24-hour mark? I certainly hope not, but it's the weekend and people probably understand that if they email me on a Friday, they might not hear back till Monday. So I give myself grace across the weekend for sure. But in general, what I'm trying to say here is that identify your time. You can start with something longer because maybe you've never had an expected response time before, so 48 hours feels good to you, and you need to get caught up on email to a point where you can actually uphold that, so you don't want to commit to it and not be able to do it. And then maybe once you get caught up, you change it then to 24 hours or whatever works for you, but manage expectations by acknowledging receipt if you are not going to be able to respond in an appropriate amount of time. I think it's totally fine to say, hey, have a lot going on. I will get back to you by blank. Now they know you've received it, you're thinking about it, and when they should expect to hear from you. And if that changes, hey, guess what? You need to let them know again. Every single time you don't follow through, you're breaking down trust. So that's one of the things that I really want people to think about in today's episode. What is that appropriate response time? Acknowledge that time, reset when necessary, and manage those expectations. Just an idea of dealing with emails in general. I know Eric Murr kept using the word triage. We have to triage our inbox. It is so true. A lot of people ask me, I don't know how you keep up with your emails. Well, honestly, if I look at an email and my response will take less than 60 seconds, I respond to it while it's in front of me in my email. I never come back to that one. It's like, if I can knock this out in less than a minute, I'm going to handle it now, not worry about it. If it's something more lengthy, I save it for one of my admin times in my day where I'm specifically focused on email responses. And that's when I can handle it. And then there are also times that I respond to people and say, hey, this actually elicits a very lengthy response. I'd prefer to have this conversation on the phone or at our next appointment. Can we plan on doing that instead? Because I don't feel like I can convey the message. But for triage, I really do think that handling those really small, easy, simple emails, they might be quick and easy for you, but they might be holding up the other person. If it's a simple yes or no, I can do that date and time. Shoot, let's respond to that and not hold up the other person. Now they can get it scheduled and check that off their list. I know that I've made them happy when I do that. So that's one of my strategies. I'm not saying it's right. I am just saying for me, if it's less than 60 seconds to respond, I'm going to do it now and I'll save the other stuff for later. I also I have Google is what I use. So I flag specific emails. If I have read them and they're still waiting on a response, they're flagged. As soon as I respond and I've closed the loop completely on something, then it gets filed away, it gets tagged. There's different terminology used. I think they call it tags in Google, or labels. They call it labels. It's tags or labels. Whatever it is, I have one for everything. So if I need to come back to that email in the future, it's already sorted away. It's not in my inbox. I've closed the loop, handled it, done. But I have it to reference. So I have kind of a system for when I'm in there. I can click, 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 delete, know what's got to go. Also, if I receive some sort of junk, spam, obviously I probably signed up for something at some point to get it. I know this might sound silly, but one a day that I know I never want to read again, I commit to going through the process of clicking through to unsubscribe. So I tend to unsubscribe to like one thing a day, and slowly over time, I'm getting fewer and fewer spam messages. So another way to quickly kind of triage is start unsubscribing from the things that you don't want coming through. You can spend more time on the things that are important to you and give them the responses they deserve. So hopefully that helps a little bit, but create a system that works for you to really triage your email, sort it in a way that makes sense to you. I know Chandra Metz had said to me before, you need to do a whole class on just how you do your email, which maybe I will do at some point, but I know that it's a challenge for a lot of people. And then just consistency across what channels you're using for things. I've had a lot of conversations with some of the teams that I work with about what method of communication works best. Some of them use Slack and Teams and text messages and phone and email. And I need you to agree as a team what system you're using for communication. How is it supporting your documentation? It really starts to help make sure people are sending and receiving messages in an appropriate amount of time if you're using the right method of communication. But someone sends a Slack over here, but they're expecting an email response over here, and they don't check their Slack, and things aren't being communicated in a timely manner. It happens a lot when we're not on the same page. So just considering, consistency across what channels you're using and when, so that you have clear expectations. And then the same thing that I said for your response time, decide if you're on a team, decide what an appropriate response time is for your entire team, for your organization. How quickly are we going to respond? And let's share that commitment with our clients, because, hey, guess what? Once we commit to something, it's so hard to let someone else down, at least for me. So if I tell my clients you'll hear from me in 24 hours, I can't live with responding after 24 hours and 1 minute. It's very difficult. Maybe ridiculous, but if you commit it and share that expectation with a client, it's going to be much more powerful than just saying to yourself, okay, well, now I'm going to try to hit that 24-hour mark. So maybe committing it to, a team, a group, even if you're a solopreneur, commit it to somebody else, an accountability partner that can help you stay on track. So I really hope that this just brings some attention to your response time and how the way in which you are responding to clients, friends, colleagues, whatever it is, that you're considering how it's impacting others and their view of you. And beyond just their perception of you, but also, is it creating anxiety and frustration for them? And by the way, I am not doing this episode to call out anyone. There are probably people listening that are going to call me after the fact and say, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. You were probably talking about me in the episode. I promise that's not the case. This is coming out of, hearing it from clients, dealing with it a lot, and having to reset expectations for them. And then, yeah, of course, I experience it a lot with a lot of people. I don't want to say gotten used to, but I guess I have. I now understand that there are probably a couple of follow-ups required before I'm going to get responses from some people. But now I know that it has become the expectation. I hope that that can change in the future, and they can show me that they'll respond on the first time, or at least acknowledge receipt and tell me when they're going to get back to me, and that it will improve. But again, I notice patterns, and so now my expectation is that the pattern is going to continue. But hopefully this has helped you to really think about being more intentional in the way that you respond, and making sure that the speed at which you do and the effort that you put into the response matches how you actually feel about the person, and how important they are to you. I want to jump into leadership in the wild for a second here. So for those that haven't listened before, leadership in the wild is an opportunity to recognize someone that I've noticed leading well. If I have a guest, they do as well, but I'm writing solo today. So I actually want to highlight this week Della DeHaven. So Della DeHaven is right here in the Shenandoah Valley. She has retired, but as a retiree, she is a huge small business advocate in our area. She's very involved. She volunteers a lot, supports a lot of wonderful causes, is on the board of Women of Winchester. I had the pleasure of hearing her speak just this week, which feels like weeks ago for some reason. But the reason I want to highlight her is, one, she's retired and she is giving back so much in the community. Of course, that doesn't have to be the case. Some people choose to, in retirement, go off, do their own thing, and it's not really a service-based focus, and I get that. Maybe they've spent their whole life in service and now they want some time to themselves, but she is truly involved in so many things and giving back and supporting local small business. But when she spoke, she had mentioned using some things that she had heard other people in her life share, and she wanted to show that she had been listening over the years. And she actually pulled me aside and said to me, when you listen to me speak today, listen, because you'll be able to tell I've been listening to what you've been saying, which was so cool. But that's not why I'm sharing this. I want to share about it because of influence. So I sat in the room that day knowing that she had already mentioned, she had heard me say something before, and that somehow she was going to incorporate that into her presentation, and that she had been listening. But then I listened to her presentation, and as I was sitting there at lunch, I heard a couple of just key quotes, sentences that she said that, were really impactful for me. So I jotted them down so I could come back to them later and think about them. And one of them was about leaving a mark, but not leaving a scar. So really thinking about leaving a mark on, other people, but making sure that mark isn't a scar. I thought that was powerful. She also talked about being at rock bottom. Rock bottom actually serves as a great foundation to build from. Of course, this isn't her exact quote, but the idea that, I feel like I've hit rock bottom before, where I felt nothing was going right, at all. Things were crumbling around me. I felt that way when I was going through my divorce, but I also felt that way on bed rest with Lyme disease, not knowing where to go next before I started this business. It does make a solid foundation to build something new off of, and what a cool way to look at it. But I'm sharing this because after she said it and I wrote it down, I was having a meeting later in the week, and I always do growth tips at the beginning of these sessions with my clients, and I incorporated her quotes into the presentation and acknowledged that they were hers. And then one of those clients reached out and said that she loved those quotes and asked if I could email them to her, so she had them. And it just really made me think about how one statement, one sentence that you say can have such an impact on someone else's life. And sometimes you don't even know. You just hold on to, whatever someone said to you. You might repeat it to someone else in the future, and then it just flows and it continues. Think about the level of influence. So my client now has it. I don't know in what capacity she'll use it and specifically why she requested it, but I know that she teaches classes as well. And my gut tells me that she's going to use it somehow with those people who have no idea who Della DeHaven is, but now will. So anyway, just so cool being able to see Della in action and having great positive influence on the community and now well beyond, because that individual is in Pennsylvania and who knows who she's going to share it with next. So just a shout out to Della. Thank you for sharing all your wonderful wisdom with us about the comeback after the setback. That was a really great topic, and I appreciate you. Okay, the next segment that I typically do is called Leadership Unscripted. And Leadership Unscripted is a listener submitted scenario or challenge that someone is facing that they'd like some feedback on. So typically I have a guest in the room and they might support with some ideas of how this person might overcome a challenge, or I unpack it myself when I am solo. So today's topic is actually something that I am doing a workshop on this week. So I'm going to try not to turn this into a whole workshop and just share an idea or two. But this week's challenge comes from, we're going to call this person Blake. Blake says, delegation is my biggest struggle. I know I should let go of certain tasks, but I'm afraid things won't get done right and it will come back on me. How can I actually trust my team? So this is definitely something that I struggled with. It's something that a lot of my clients struggle with. Wanting to hang on to things, not let them go, whether it's that you think someone's not going to be able to do it as effectively as you, or it's going to take longer to train someone to do it than if you would just do it yourself. But this person says, how do I actually trust my team? It sounds like it's coming down to trust here. So you'll never know if you can trust this person or these people with a task or a project until you try, right? I often think about what is the cost of holding on to this? How does it impact me or impact the team if I continue to hold on to this? Because if long term it is not helpful, then I need to make the best decision to try and figure out a way to get other people's support with that. So I immediately think you're going to want to start with smaller, low-risk tasks or projects. You're going to want to find things that you can kind of test the waters and see how someone does. You want to be very clear in your expectations, very clear with what the outcomes you are looking for might be. Unless there is a very specific way that it has to be done to where it's like creating a compliance issue or something like that, you want to give the person the freedom to approach the task in the way that works best for them, as long as they're reaching your outcomes in a timely manner. So you don't want to get in there and micromanage and say this is absolutely the way it has to be done, because actually you might find out that they come up with a new innovative way to do something when you've been doing it inefficiently in the past. So sometimes it can be such a learning experience to have someone else take it on and see, where they go and how they get there. So thinking about those smaller, low-risk things and being very clear with expectations, I actually have a delegation framework that I teach so that it's actually creating a common language in your business, which is something that I'm talking about at the summit coming up. But once your team understands a specific framework, whether you are the one delegating or you're receiving a task through delegation, you understand what information you should be receiving or giving anytime something's being delegated, so you can advocate for what you need in that process. So if someone's delegating to you and you have this framework and you know that that person did not share with you appropriate milestones for follow-up when they should be hearing back from you, if you have this common language in the form of a delegation framework that everybody knows and understands on the team, then they can say, I didn't get any milestones for this. When would you like to receive some of these pieces from me? What are the deadlines? What are the specific milestones I should have reached by those deadlines? There are lots of pieces. I say lots, it's 5, but there are several pieces to the framework that I choose to use. But once people understand it, it's super simple, and it's a way for everybody to get on the same page. So I immediately think of the size of what you're giving someone and empowering them to do, and let them feel good about it, feel confident that they're doing a great job. It's allowing you to see where their skill set lies. Is this something that you want to continue to train and develop them in? You really do want to match the right person to the right task. So sometimes that takes some thought and effort too. I've been using Working Genius with my clients a lot lately to really look at what tasks and projects best align with people's areas of genius and competency, so that they're not being asked to do something that's going to continue to be frustrational for them when there's someone else on the team that might actually be energized and fulfilled by completing that. So those are just a couple things that come to mind. Like I said, I could do a whole class on this, but if it comes down to trust, you're never going to trust them until you give them a chance to prove that they can do what you're asking them to and live up to your expectations. So test it, see how it goes, and know that if it doesn't go perfectly the first time, that's normal. Really look at yourself and look at what you could have done to more effectively communicate your expectations so that you're setting them up for success. They have the resources they need, and so on. Don't set them up for failure just to prove that you should be allowed to hang on to the task. I know that strategy. Like, oh, well, I let them do this and they failed, so I guess I'm going to have to hang on to it after all. Sometimes people do that because they just want to hang on to things. Just saying. Not calling anyone out. Just saying. So that is my response for you, Blake. I hope that that's helpful to you. So to close it out for today, I typically do a branching out challenge, and that is just for our new listeners that don't know, that is just me challenging my listeners to do something based on what they heard today. So you probably know what that is based on today's topic. I really just want you to reflect on your current response time. Are you getting back to people in a reasonable amount of time? Do they know what to expect from you when it comes to communication? And is it time to hit the reset button on that? Set some expectations for yourself. Share those expectations with others so you can be held accountable. But what is that amount of time for you, and how can you do a better job of keeping up with the communications you receive so you don't leave people hanging and wondering if you ever received the message to begin with. So I also challenge you to just acknowledge receipt, even if it's a document that you've been waiting for. Just acknowledge receipt. Thank you. That's all it takes. Now the person knows you've got it and they can check it off the list. So I know that's a lot, but hopefully that's helpful, and you will notice that it will improve some of your relationships as well as your follow-up improves. Well, thank you for joining me today. I hope you found value in this episode and share it with others that you think might need to hear it as well. That doesn't mean go share this episode with everyone you know that's not responding to your emails. That might be a little passive aggressive. So maybe just share it on your social media and let people find it on their own. But if you would like to submit some ideas for episodes, feel free to shoot us an email at info@branchingoutpodcast.com. You can jump on the website and you could choose to apply to be a guest if you are interested in doing so. But we'd love to hear from you. As always, a new episode comes out every Friday at noon Eastern Standard Time. So be sure to subscribe so you get those notifications. And until next time, keep branching out.